On March 22, 1999, in the quiet town of Elephant Butte, New Mexico, a woman named Cynthia Vigil ran for her life. Naked and covered in blood, she had escaped from what would later be known as one of the most horrific crime scenes in American history. A soundproof trailer filled with chains, whips, medical tools, and torture devices. A place its owner chillingly called his toy box. This is the true and deeply disturbing case of David Parker Ray, also known as the Toy Box Killer. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. David Parker Ray was born on November 6, 1939, in Belen, New Mexico. From an early age, those who knew him recalled a quiet, awkward boy, one who kept to himself, rarely smiling, and never quite fitting in with other children. But beneath that silence lurked a darkness that would only grow with time. Ray was raised by his strict, often cruel grandfather, a man who believed discipline meant control and control meant fear. His father, a violent alcoholic, was rarely around, but when he did visit, he brought disturbing gifts. Pornographic magazines filled with images of bondage, torture, and sadism. Most young boys might have been horrified, but for David Parker Ray, these images awakened something inside him. At school, he was relentlessly bullied, called names, pushed around, made to feel small and insignificant. To cope, he retreated into his fantasies, ones where he was no longer weak, ones where he held absolute control. As he grew older, his fantasies took a darker turn. During his time in the Army, Ray learned a valuable skill: mechanics. He became an expert at building and modifying machines. But what no one knew was that these skills would later be used to design his own personal torture chamber. What looked like a normal trailer from the outside was, in reality, a carefully designed chamber of horrors. David Parker Ray called it his toy box. Inside, the walls were lined with whips, chains, pulleys, medical instruments, and power tools, each modified for torture. There were mirrors on the ceiling, allowing victims to see every moment of their suffering. "Hello there, bitch. You're probably wondering why you're here. You're about to be kept naked and chained up, like an animal, for a few days. You're going to be raped thoroughly and repeatedly. If you don't cooperate, I'll torture you in ways you can't even imagine." This was the first thing his victims heard upon waking up inside the trailer. But David Parker Ray wasn't acting alone. For decades, women disappeared around New Mexico, but no one suspected Ray. He was careful. He chose victims who were vulnerable: runaways, sex workers, women whose disappearances wouldn't make headlines. But as with every serial killer, his downfall was inevitable. On March 22, 1999, everything changed. Ray had kidnapped a 22-year-old woman named Cynthia Vigil. Just like the others, she woke up naked and chained inside the toy box. But Cynthia was different. She wasn't going to die without a fight. One day when Ray left for work, his girlfriend and accomplice, Cindy Hendy, made a crucial mistake. She left the keys to Cynthia's chains on a table nearby. Cynthia seized her chance. She lunged at Cindy, grabbing a lamp and smashing it over her head. With adrenaline pumping through her veins, Cynthia fought through the pain, the fear, and the trauma. She ran, barefoot, naked, covered in blood, down a desert road, desperate for help. A nearby couple saw her and called 911. Within minutes, police stormed Ray's property, and what they found inside the toy box was beyond imagination. When police entered the toy box, they immediately realized they were standing inside hell on earth. The walls were lined with whips, chains, knives, surgical instruments, and electrocution devices. There was a metal gynecological table in the center, with restraints and mirrors positioned so victims could see themselves being tortured. But the most horrifying discovery was the collection of videotapes and journals. Ray had documented everything. The journals contained descriptions of dozens of victims, some dating back to the 1950s. The tapes showed torture sessions, proving that Cynthia was not the first and likely not the last. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered details so twisted that many questioned whether Ray had acted alone all these years. It turned out he hadn't. David Parker Ray didn't just have a girlfriend, he had an entire team of accomplices. His girlfriend, Cindy Hendy, actively helped him lure victims and dispose of evidence. His daughter, Jessie Ray, had helped him find and drug women. His friend Dennis Yancey admitted to helping Ray murder at least one woman. With all this evidence, it seemed like an open and shut case. But what happened next shocked everyone. You would think a man responsible for unspeakable horrors would be sentenced to death without question, but reality was much different. Authorities had a huge problem. Most of Ray's victims were missing. They had Cynthia Vigil's testimony, but Ray's lawyers argued there was no proof he had killed anyone. There were no bodies, no DNA, only recordings and journals. And then, in a shocking twist, David Parker Ray agreed to a plea deal. Instead of life in prison or the death penalty, he was sentenced to just 224 years behind bars. But he never served his full sentence. Just 1 year later, in 2002, Ray suffered a fatal heart attack in prison. He died without ever revealing the location of his victims. To this day, authorities believe David Parker Ray may have killed over 60 women, but their bodies have never been found. His property was searched, lakes were dredged, but nothing, no remains, no graves, nothing. Some believe he buried them in the desert. Others think he dissolved them in acid. And the toy box? Authorities destroyed it. They wanted to erase its existence, hoping to remove the nightmare from history. But for the victims, the horror will never be forgotten. David Parker Ray is dead, but his crimes still haunt the families of his victims. If you or anyone you know has information about the missing women connected to this case, please report it to the FBI. Because somewhere out there are still secrets left to be uncovered. Thank you for watching. If you want more deep dives into chilling true crime cases, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Until next time, stay safe.